This is part 2, episode 169. A golden flame lingered above the ground. It appeared to have ignited the sky at this moment. The Gold Emperor Incinerating Heavenly Flame was ranked 4th on the Heavenly Flame ranking. It was only inferior to the Purifying Demonic Lotus Flame. Although this Heavenly Flame was not as mysterious as the Purifying Demon Lotus Flame, it was renowned during the ancient times. Moreover, this kind of heavenly flame was an inheritance of the Gu clan, but seldom anyone could subdue it. Hence, Saint Gu's heart was a little shaken when he recognized this flame. It is indeed the Gold Emperor Incinerating Heavenly Flame. Xiao Yan sensed an intense fire fluctuation from the distant sky. His heart shook. He had already guessed this a long time ago, but Sun seldomly unleashed the Gold Emperor Incinerating Heavenly Flame. Hence, he had never confirmed his guess. It is indeed worthy of the Gu clan to be in possession of a mysterious inheritance like this heavenly flame. Xiao Yan sighed in envy within his heart. The Gold Emperor Incinerating Heavenly Flame was ranked high on the Heavenly Flame ranking. This naturally proved its great strength. If one were to talk about its ferocity, even Xiao Yan's newly born Heavenly Flame, made from the merger of 4 heavenly flames, might not be better than this Gold Emperor Incinerating Heavenly Flame. After all, the heavenly flames that were ranked near the top of the Heavenly Flame ranking were unbelievably terrifying. An example was the top 3 heavenly flames. Saying that they possessed the strength to destroy the world was not an exaggeration. A great disaster had befallen the world in ancient times any time a top heavenly flame erupted. Xiao Yan swiftly focused his mind as this thought lingered within his heart. For clusters of heavenly flames swiftly merged together as waves of violent destructive fluctuations quietly spread. It is rumored that the Gold Emperor Incinerating Heavenly Flame can burn Do Qi. Its ferocity is well known. Today, this elderly self shall take a look to see if it is as the rumors describe. Gu stepped through the air. His green eyes stared at Sun who was some distance away, as he spoke in a hoarse voice. Black fog suddenly surged from the skeleton walking stick in his hand after his final word sounded. In the blink of an eye, this black fog permeated the sky. An extremely dark and cold energy hid in this black fog. Hence, it did not scatter despite the high temperature in the sky. Instead, the fog quickly agglomerated into an enormous black skeleton under Gu's control. This black skeleton was 10,000 feet tall. It stood in the sky like a divine skeleton of evil. A dense black fog churned out of its body as a chilly pressure swept out. It caused most of the people present to feel as though their very soul was in a chilly pond. The atmosphere was exceptionally gloomy and cold. Darkness Skeleton King, he has summoned this thing the moment he started fighting. It seems that Elder Gu is quite afraid of the so-called Gold Emperor Incinerating Heavenly Flame. Han Yu pondered some thoughts as he observed the enormous black skeleton in the sky. This black skeleton was a rare Qian-class low-grade Do skill. One would be able to use one's Do Qi and the surrounding energy to form a Skeleton King after mastering it. This Skeleton King was as hard as metal and was immune to fire and water. Moreover, each and every part of its body contained an extremely dark and cold energy. If an ordinary expert were to be struck by this darkness, that expert's body might look fine, but their soul would be eroded. Hence, this thing could be considered quite sinister and vicious. With Gu's current Bansheng strength, the black skeleton that he had summoned after unleashing this Do skill with all his strength was frighteningly powerful. Even some experts who had reached the Bansheng class had to be cautious when facing this big thing. Thus, one could tell how troublesome the Black Skeleton King was. Go? Gu pointed the skeleton walking stick at Sun from afar after summoning the enormous black skeleton. 2 clusters of green light immediately appeared. He took a step across the sky and appeared a short distance in front of Sun. The skeleton's palm, which was covered with a dark black fog, easily tore through space and ruthlessly slammed towards Sun's head. Sun did not dare to slight the skeleton's ferocious and shockingly powerful attack. Her lovely figure swiftly pulled back. At the same time, a 100-foot large golden flame cluster suddenly surged out of her body. It ruthlessly collided with the black skeleton's hand. Sizzle sizzle. A sharp sizzling sound erupted when the two collided. An extreme cold and an extreme heat intertwined with each other. A nauseating white fog rose and spread. Bang! Gu's shriveled hand was clenched as he stood far away. That enormous skeleton's hand was also clenched. One could hear a crack sound as the golden flame was shattered. Zana bunched her eyebrows together after her retaliation attack was easily destroyed. An elite Ban Sheng was indeed very powerful. Even though she possessed the aid of the Gold Emperor incinerating heavenly flame, she was only able to protect herself. Fortunately, Zana's task was not to defeat Gu. Instead, her aim was to delay him. Gold Emperor incinerating heavenly formation. Zana's delicate body swiftly pulled back. Her hand formed many mysterious seals. After her cool cry sounded, the golden flame that lingered in the sky suddenly began to wiggle. A dozen plus golden fire pillars shot down from the sky. The fire pillars spread and merged with each other. It appeared like fishing net made of fire that connected the sky and the land, trapping the enormous black skeleton in the process. Bang! The black skeleton's fist, which contained a dark and chilly fog, ruthlessly slammed into the fire curtain. An earth-shaking sound appeared as many ripples formed on the fire curtain. Refine! Zana's face was grave. The seal formed by her hand changed as countless golden fire pillars shot out of the formation. They struck the surrounding fire curtain before being reflected. Finally, all of them shot into the enormous skeleton close together. These fire pillars had become even more glaring after being reflected by the fire curtain. The frightening temperature within them caused the air inside of the great formation to ignite. A glaring golden flame fiercely and wildly burned the enormous black skeleton. What a frightening flame! The expressions of most people present changed as they looked at the golden flame that seemed to have spread across every corner of the great formation. Even with the isolation of the large formation, they were still able to sense just how terrifying the temperature was within it. Even an expert at the 9th change peak of the Dozun class would not be able to endure for more than a minute inside. After all, the Gold Emperor incinerating heavenly flame was a frightening heavenly flame said to be able to burn even Do Chi. Raw? The black fog around the enormous black skeleton quickly disappeared because of these wildly incinerating golden flames. Some of the bones had even become blurry at this moment. Regardless of how strong Gu was, it was impossible for him to completely ignore the frightening Gold Emperor incinerating heavenly flame. It is indeed worthy of being the Gold Emperor incinerating heavenly flame. Gu knit his brows when he saw the black skeleton struggling within the fire formation. If Zana did not possess the Gold Emperor incinerating heavenly flame, she would not have been able to force the darkness skeleton into such a state regardless of the Do Chi she used. Unfortunately, although the heavenly flame is powerful, you are unable to unleash its full potential with your strength. It was rumored that the first owner of this legendary Gold Emperor incinerating heavenly flame could burn the realm created by an elite Doshin into nothing with this flame. Gu's eyes flickered as his shriveled hands formed a strange seal. At the same time, a strange sound was emitted from his mouth. Raw? The large black skeleton in the sea of golden flames suddenly shook after Gu's cry sounded. Wave after wave of black fog surged out of its body in all directions. Miserable screeches echoed across the sky. If one were to look carefully, one would discover that the black fog was being formed by an unimaginable number of souls. Bang bang bang. Countless numbers of souls gushed out. They suddenly exploded upon contact with the golden flame. The force from the self-detonation of such a large number of souls caused even the golden sea of fire to blast apart. The moment this occurred, the body of the black skeleton suddenly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it had transformed from 10,000 feet tall to 100 feet tall. Although its body had shrunk, the skeleton had grown even darker. A frighteningly dark and chilly energy slowly spread from the skeleton's body. Just watch as I tear apart this fire formation of yours. The skeleton slowly lifted its head. Its jaw moved as it emitted a strange laugh. That laugh was the voice of Gu. This old man had managed to merge his soul with the skeleton. Zana's expression was slightly altered after she heard these words. Her pretty eyes slid to where Gu was located earlier. An elderly figure was standing at that spot, but both of the elderly figure's eyes appeared vacant. Clearly, the figure was only an empty shell. The words of the black skeleton had just sounded when it flashed and appeared at the edge of the fire formation. Its palm, which contained a rich black light, gently cut across the fire curtain. A cracked line slowly appeared. The relaxed cut clearly indicated that the black skeleton did not meet even the slightest obstruction. Boom! The fire formation seemed to have been destroyed after this tear appeared. It let out a boom and exploded in front of many pairs of eyes. Little girl, if you had advanced to the Banshin class, it would be difficult to determine just who would win today. Unfortunately, the black skeleton's green eyes stared at Sun-Er while a hoarse voice was slowly emitted. The corner of Sun-Er's mouth was lifted despite hearing this. She softly said, "My intentions were not to defeat you. I have already completed my task." Sun-Er's delicate figure quickly withdrew after she spoke. She appeared behind Xiao Yan in a flash. At this moment, there was an exquisite artistic-looking fire lotus slowly rotating in his palm. An annihilation aura slowly spread, causing the surrounding space to distort. A hoarse voice was slowly emitted from the black skeleton as it looked at the fire lotus in Xiao Yan's hand. "Is this the thing that you create after merging heavenly flames? I have given you so much time. Hopefully, you will not disappoint me." A. It was 5 clusters last chapter. B. Green core flame. Fallen heart flame. Bone-chilling flame. 10,000 burning flame. Not sure if the 5th was some other flame he added in before. See, I think at this point it was the fake heavenly flame that he was using to make the lotus a little stronger. Relax, I will not disappoint you. A cold smile was lifted on Xiao Yan's face after he heard Ji Yu's hoarse voice. He slowly lifted his hand. The exquisite 5-colored fire lotus began to slowly rotate faster. Sun-Er, stand back. Xiao Yan turned his head and ordered Sun-Er to move back. The destructive force from the extermination fire lotus was really too frightening. Even he would not be able to endure it if he stood too close. Understood. Xiao Yan Ge, be careful. Sun-Er nodded. She was naturally able to sense just how frightening the fire lotus in Xiao Yan's hand was. However, she was not overly worried as her body moved and swiftly retreated. We should also pull further back. Ji Qingyang waved his hand after seeing Sun-Er hurry over. His expression was grave as he led everyone to withdraw an even greater distance. Xiao Yan, this is perhaps the first time that you have fought an elite Banshin, right? In that case, allow the old me to tell you just how enormous and irrevocable the difference between a Dozun and a Dosheng is. The eyes of the black skeleton flickered as a chilly voice was slowly emitted. Xiao Yan faintly smiled. He flicked his finger and the extermination lotus flame in his hand suddenly began to rotate at even faster. A moment later, it suddenly turned into a glowing ball that shot away from his palm. No sound was emitted as it flew, but everywhere it passed quietly collapsed. A huge black spatial crack continuously appeared behind the flame. The extermination lotus flame did not display an overly soul-stirring momentum, but in the eyes of a genuine expert, that beautiful fire lotus was like the stickle of a death god, causing one to feel an extremely rich aura of death. 2 clusters of serene green light were present deep within the skeleton's eyes. Those eyes stared at the fire lotus as it literally tore through space and headed his way. A black vapor was slowly spat out of his body. 10,000 soul bone armor. After the hoarse elderly voice was transmitted from the black skeleton's mouth, waves after waves of dense black fog suddenly began to erupt from his body in all directions. Sharp miserable screeches reverberated across the sky. The black fog was clearly being formed by many spiritual bodies. All of these souls began to adhere to the skeleton's body the moment they appeared. Black light surged and a bone armor with a black luster finally appeared around the skeleton's body. There were tons of tiny bone fragments on the bone armor. These bone fragments possessed many ferocious faces. Looking from afar, these ferocious faces had gathered into a 100-foot large face. The face was filled with pain, causing the hairs on one's body to stand on end after looking at it. Xiao Yan, this elderly self shall see whether that fire lotus of yours, which is claimed to be incomparably powerful by those useless fellows, is able to break this 10,000 soul bone armor of mine. The black skeleton suddenly lifted its head after the bone armor formed. It looked at the fire lotus as it tore through the air. An elderly voice soon made a claim that echoed over the sky. Swoosh! St. Guyu's hoarse voice had just sounded when the fire lotus suddenly arrived. It heavily collided with the enormous bone armor in front of many pairs of eyes. Bang! The grassland was quiet the instant the collision occurred. It was as though even the wind had disappeared. However, this silence only lasted a moment before a soul-stirring explosion occurred that caused the land and sky to shake. A 10,000-foot large firestorm suddenly spread from the point of collision. A large part of space collapsed into many dark holes as a frightening gale came pouring down. Sand rose and rocks flew, and everyone could see the ground within a 10,000-foot radius peeled off at a speed visible to the naked eye. Large cracks continued to spread from deep underground, appearing as though an earthquake had occurred. A paleness surfaced on the faces of everyone present as they watched the extermination storm sweep across the sky. Zhu Feng, Han Yu, and the rest of their groups displayed unusually ugly expressions. None of them could imagine that Xiao Yan was able to unleash such a frightening attack with his 9-change peak Dozan strength. A fire lotus explosion at this level was something that even an ordinary Qian-class middle-level Do skill could not achieve. A destructive firestorm radiated across the sky. That enormous heaven phoenix illusory figure floating in the sky was also struck by this force. Its huge body trembled before it emitted a bang and exploded into nothing in front of Zhu Feng's shocked eyes. Zhu Feng spat out a mouthful of fresh blood after the heaven phoenix illusory figure was shattered. His expression was pale. Clearly, he had suffered a terrible backlash. Bang! The firestorm in the sky, which was filled with a destructive ripple, began to sweep wildly around. Any living creature that was within the area it spread to suffered a decisive blow. Those surrounding experts were so shocked that they hurriedly fled into the distance. None of them dared to approach an area where the flames could reach. Xiao Yan stood in the distant sky and watched the extremely beautiful firestorm, but his expression did not relax. This was the first time he had fought against an elite Doshen. Although the extermination fire lotus was extremely powerful, he also understood just how terrifying a Bansheng was. These old demon-like existences were quite powerful even within the Han clan and other ancient clans. If one claimed they could be defeated this easily, one would have underestimated this so-called Shen-class experts. The firestorm that swept across the sky finally weakened under everyone's roaming eyes. After this storm weakened, space itself, where many holes had formed, slowly began to recover. Xiao Yan's eyes stared intently at the middle of the firestorm. As the firestorm weakened, a 100-foot-tall black skeleton once again appeared in front of everyone's line of sight. It has managed to endure the attack. A wild joy erupted within the eyes of the experts from the Han clan after seeing the black skeleton still standing in the sky. On the other hand, those from the other parties felt their hearts sink. Even such a powerful attack was unable to do any damage. Was an elite Bansheng really so powerful? Xiao Yan's expression tensed well. His eyes did not blink as they stared at the huge black skeleton. He did not believe that the extermination fire lotus was unable to damage Guu. Crack! The surface of the black skeleton in the sky suddenly emitted a slight cracking sound in front of Xiao Yan's intense gaze. A broken piece of bone armor suddenly fell as some stunned eyes watched. Crack, crack! After the first piece of bone armor fell, an increasing number of bone armor fragments began to scatter down like snow. Many cracks quickly began to appear on the enormous body of the black skeleton. Finally, that large bone armor emitted a bang as it was blasted into bone fragments that scattered. The great joy with the eyes of those people from the Han clan quickly stilled upon seeing the bone armor break. The bone armor shattered, revealing the actual body of the skeleton. However, the black skeleton's body, which was as hard as metal, began to be filled with densely packed crack lines. A gentle breeze blew across the sky and the green light in the skeleton's eyes vanished with a puff. The black skeleton slowly turned into ashes that scattered with the wind in front of many stunned eyes the moment the two clusters of light vanished. The unmoving body of Gu in the distance suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood when the skeleton turned into dust. Those hollow eyes had regained a green glow. His face was pale. Gu rubbed the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. He slowly lifted his head and spoke in a dense voice. "All right, no wonder you were able to force those people to return in defeat. Xiao Yan, you really do have some ability. Even though you seriously injured me, I will still take that little life of yours." Sizzle. Gu's dense cry had just sounded when a golden light appeared in front of him with lightning-like speed that caught him off guard. A fist that seemed to be made out of gold ruthlessly smashed toward Gu's head while accompanied by a terrifying wind. Humph! This sudden lightning-like attack caused Gu to feel a little absent-minded. Fortunately, he recovered. He forcefully suppressed the injuries within his body as he swiftly swung his hand out. After which, his hand collided with the enormous golden fist. Clang! The two collided and a clear metallic sound immediately rang through the sky. That enormous golden body staggered back over a dozen steps. That fist, which seemed to be made of gold, had gained a half-inch deep handprint. The retaliation ability of an elite Bansheng, even one who was seriously injured, was quite frightening. You are a little lacking if you wish to kill the old me. Gu was forced to take a step back, but he quickly stabilized his body. His eyes were dark and cold as he looked at the golden human figure a short distance away. With his eyesight, he was naturally able to recognize Xiao Yan even after he had unleashed a body-modifying Do skill. Since you have already used the fire lotus you are so proud of, you should now come with the old me. Gu's face was filled with a ferocity. It had never occurred to him that he would be seriously injured by someone from the younger generation. He also understood that he was a little arrogant this time around. If his soul had not escaped, he would have ended up suffering an injury, which could not be healed, from that terrifying fire lotus. Gu's large hand suddenly grabbed at Xiao Yan after he uttered those words. A black hand suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Yan and grabbed at the golden giant he had transformed into. However, the space behind Xiao Yan suddenly fluctuated when the large black hand was wrapping around him. A spatial crack appeared, and a familiar elderly figure slowly walked out. His faint voice reverberated over the land. Gu, aren't you embarrassed to attack a member of the younger generation despite of your status? Gu was startled when he saw this elderly figure suddenly appear. He uttered a name in a dark and solemn voice, Yao Chen. Teacher? Why are you here? Xiao Yang was similarly stunned because of Yao Lao's appearance. His powerful voice was filled with a strangeness. He had yet to shatter the spatial scroll that Yao Lao had given him. You have stayed in the ancient region for too long and I was a little worried. Hence, I found time to hurry over. Unexpectedly, I have found you in this situation. Yao Lao was suspended in front of Xiao Yang. He smiled faintly before his eyes swept over Xiao Yang. A pleased expression surfaced in his eyes as he said, Your strength has increased within a few short months. You have really exceeded my expectations. Zhana's group in the distance sighed in relief when they saw Yao Lao suddenly appear. Gu, you can be considered part of the older generation with some reputation in the Central Plains. Haven't you been a little too shameless today? Yao Lao's eyes landed on Gu as he slowly questioned. HMPH, there is no such thing as being shameless in the eyes of my Han clan. We will use all tricks as long as we complete our mission. It is really a joke for you to say these words to this elderly self. Gu's expression was gloomy as he coldly laughed. Ha ha, I have forgotten the degree of depravity that you people are capable of, Yao Lao laughed after hearing Gu's reply. He continued with a faint smile, bullying a member of the younger generation does not show off your capabilities. Why don't the two of us fight? What do you say? Gu's face twitched. Both he and Yao Lao were experts at the Bansheng class. If he were at his peak, it would be difficult to predict just who would be victorious, but he wasn't at his peak. His chances of victory in a fight against Yao Lao would not exceed 30%. Yao Chen, you should not act arrogantly in front of me. The experts within my Han clan are not something your Falling Star Pavilion can compare with. What can you do if the old me summons another old ghost from my clan? Although Gu was unable to beat Yao Lao, he was unwilling to soften his stance as he coldly laughed. Our Gu clan is not afraid of you if you wish to fight in terms of numbers. Gu's words had just sounded when Zun Er's group quickly flew over. They appeared behind Yao Chen. She clenched her hand. A spatial scroll appeared in it before it was quickly shattered. A spatial fluctuation spread. After which, a spatial crack appeared and an elderly figure slowly stepped out in front of the ugly expressions of Gu's group. Ha ha, it is unexpected that this place is so lively. A familiar laugh subsequently appeared after that elderly figure stepped out. Elder Tong Xian. Xiao Yan was slightly startled when he saw this figure. This elder was Elder Tong Xian, whom Xiao Yan had met in the Gu realm. Ha ha, Xiao Yan, we meet again. Elder Tong Xian smiled at Xiao Yan. His eyes quickly swept over Xiao Yan's body and some surprise flashed within them. It was a long while later before he turned to Yao Lao beside him and laughed. This must be Yao Zunja. The one whose name shook the Central Plains back then, right? Ha ha, currently, it seems more suitable to call you Saint Yao. Yao Lao merely cupped his hands together when he heard Elder Tong Xian's laughing voice. His face was full of smiles as he uttered a couple of courteous words in reply. Elder Tong Xian, Gu Qingyang by the side waited until Elder Tong Xian had spoken with Xiao Yang and the others before softly summarizing the events that had occurred. The Han clan is becoming more arrogant. Elder Tong Xian knit his brow after hearing Gu Qingyang's summary. He stared at Gu with somewhat unfriendly eyes. Gu's expression became a little unnatural after being looked at by Elder Tong Xian and Yao Lao. Both were elite Banshens. He might be able to rely on the strength of the Han clan and show no fear against the Falling Star Pavilion, but he needed to be more cautious when facing the Gu clan. This clan, which was extremely old, possessed a very powerful strength. Han Yu and the Han clan's experts flew to Gu. Their expressions were a little ugly as they looked at the other party's lineup. This current situation had caused their advantage evaporate. Elder Gu, do we need to summon other experts from the clan? Han Yu softly inquired. Gu's eyes flashed. He asked, have you seen the Bodhisattva heart? Han Yu was startled after hearing this question. He hesitantly shook his head, no. Gu knit his brow when he heard this reply. He gently exhaled and said, in that case, let's leave. The members of the Gu clan are also here. If we summon other experts over, they will also do the same. At that time, we will definitely expose some of our strength. This will not benefit us. Han Yu's heart felt somewhat unwilling when he heard that Gu planned to give up, but he also understood the current situation. Gu had been seriously injured by Xiao Yan's frightening fire lotus earlier. It was difficult for him to deal with just a single elite Bansheng. Moreover, the other party currently had 2 Banshens. Although the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe also possessed Bansheng-class demons, they would be unwilling to become enemies with a faction like the Gu clan given that they were frivolous birds. Hence, Ju Feng could not be relied on to summon experts to support them. Xian Tong, there is no need for you to utter such nonsense. Once I make a full recovery, the old me will accompany you in whatever you wish to do. Gu's eyes were dark and cold as they stared at Elder Xian Tong. Elder Xian Tong smiled when he heard these words, but he did not pay them any heed. He could hear Gu's intent to retreat in his words, so he did not try to be overboard. He also understood that it was impossible for them to really hold Gu's group back. The retaliation from an elite Bansheng prior to death was quite frightening. Additionally, Gu's group definitely possessed more spatial scrolls that could summon other experts from their clan. If they were to end up in a stalemate, the experts from both clans would be forced to appear. Additionally, Xiao Yang, Yao Chen. I will remind you that none of those my Hall of Souls wishes to capture can escape. The Falling Star Pavilion is destined to be turned into ruins by my Han clan. You should enjoy your time while you can. Gu's dense eyes swung to Xiao Yang and Yao Lao as he made a threat. There is no need for you to be worried about this. My Falling Star Pavilion is a tough bone. If your Hall of Souls really wishes to take a bite, we will definitely shatter a few of your teeth. Yao Lao laughed. Their relationship with the Hall of Souls was at the point where neither would rest until the other was dead. It was pointless to use any softer tones. Since this was the case, what was the point of giving the Hall of Souls any face? Hopefully, you will be able to still utter these words when my Hall of Souls army reaches you. Gu coldly laughed and then ceased speaking. His eyes ruthlessly glanced at Xiao Yan before he turned around and took the lead to rush out of the ancient wasteland region. Han Yu and the other experts from the Han clan could only follow behind him in dissatisfaction. The group from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe did not dare to remain after seeing Han Yu's group leave in a dispirited manner. They hurriedly followed close behind. Xiao Yan felt a little regretful as he watched those people fleeing within the blink of an eye. He sighed, "What a pity. We did not cause the Hall of Souls to suffer a loss other than seriously injuring Gu. Ha ha, you are already quite incredible to injure an elite Bansheng," Yao Lao laughed. "There is nothing we can do if they wish to leave. The Han clan is too powerful. If we were to engage in an all-out battle, we would be the ones who end up suffering. Brother Yao Chen is right. The Han clan is mysterious and unfathomable. It is extremely difficult to deal with them. Even our Gu clan does not dare to corner them. Being able to frighten them off is not a bad ending." Elder Tong Xian by the side laughed in agreement. He glanced at everyone and voiced his thoughts. "However, since the matter of the Bodhisattva ancient tree has come to an end, we will need to hurry back to the Gu realm. It is not easy to get those old fellows to let Zuna come out. If we delay for too long, they will end up hurrying us." An unwillingness flashed across Zuna's pretty eyes when she heard his words, but she also understood that those old fellows from the clan were worried about allowing her stay in the outside world before she reached the Doshan class. She looked at Xiao Yang and softly said, "Xiao Yang Ge, you should be careful. The Han clan is extremely narrow-minded, and they will take revenge for any grudge. This time around, you have caused them to suffer a great loss. They will definitely not be able to hold back this anger. Once they are free, they will deal with the Falling Star Pavilion." "I?" Xiao Yang slightly nodded. He also understood that there was a large gap in strength between a super faction like the Han clan and the growing Falling Star Pavilion. It would give Xiao Yang an extreme headache if the Han clan launched attack with their army. "It seems that I must immediately undertake a retreat to refine the Bodhisattva heart and advance to a Bansheng once I return. Otherwise, the Falling Star Pavilion will be in danger when the Han clan attacks." "Ha ha, relax, my Gu clan has been monitoring the actions of the Han clan. We will receive word if they make any major movements. Moreover, they would need to at least dispatch 2 elite Banshengs to destroy this new Falling Star Pavilion. This lineup is something that the Han clan has not revealed for many years. Therefore, you need not be overly worried." Elder Tong Xian laughed. "If that day really comes, the Gu clan will not simply stand idly by the side. You possess the ancient jade on you. We will not simply watch it fall into the hands of the Han clan. In that case, we will trouble Elder Tong Xian." Xiao Yang smiled and replied. "Ha ha, it is a small matter." Elder Tong Xian waved his hand and said, "It is already quite late. We should get moving. Let's meet again." Elder Tong Xian cupped his hands to Yao Lao after uttering some words. Before anyone could speak, he waved his sleeve, and a spatial strength spread and wrapped around Zuna's group. After which, they swiftly disappeared. Xiao Yang sighed while feeling lost as he watched Zuna's group vanish. His eyes immediately shifted to the land outside of the ancient wasteland region. He softly said, "Let's go, it is time to return." This video will end here.